Chapter 3 Detective Al. Z-Money was lying in bed, snoring. He'd had the whole house to himself the entire week, because yet again, his folks and other family members were out of town for one final lecture symposium of the year. It was the proximity alarm of his modified home defense system which woke him from his slumber, blaring red warning lights and emitting a high-pitched tone. He sat bolt upright before the rest of his consciousness followed, and comically lingered for a moment, with his eyes still closed. What? He pressed a button on his multi-device, the silver disc which seemingly never left his side. The alarm ceased. Z-Money's eyes opened. Yawning and scratching, he wound his way downstairs into the basement. After a quick eye rub, Z-Money booted up the surveillance systems. Monitors hummed to electronic life as overhead halogen laboratory lighting flickered on. A police cruiser was heading up his driveway. Z-Money rubbed his chin, contemplating. Inside the police SUV, Officer Zeeby had just received a text from her partner, Officer Allen. Apparently a clothing store was robbed first. Hire was slowing down to pull into Z-Money's driveway and said, "Same modus operandi? Hostage taken, etc.?" Zeeby replied, "Yes, so this would make 3 total hostages taken, all disappearing without a trace. But here's where it gets weird. Allen's just found out that wigs, dyes, and clothing were taken alongside the cash in the store." Hire parked the police cruiser and glanced over at Zeeby. "Interesting. Reasoning would lead me to think it's related somehow, because otherwise it's too much of a coincidence." The Zebra officer shrugged. "Guess that's what we're going to try to find out. Want me to come in with you?" The undercover hyena cop shook his head. "No, I think I'm perfectly capable of getting this uppity little snot to cooperate." Zeeby sighed. "You know, he's helped out the police." Before the Zebra could say the word before, Hire slammed the driver's side door shut. The wind was horrendous as Hire headed up the walkway to the door. Overhead, bruised clouds swirled menacingly, while underfoot, crimson leaves swarmed in waves. After knocking on the door, the undercover hyena noted that the nearby trees collided with each other violently. They looked like gnarled, withered fists, thrashing in the gusting wind. The door popped open, and Hire was greeted at first with darkness. Then, LED lighting illuminated a blinking path forward, and with trepidation, the hyena cop entered Z-Money's villa. He wound his way down the stairs into the laboratory basement. Z-Money was sitting in front of his monitor-filled, device-strewn workbench, with his feet propped up. The S's expression was neutral, with a hint of mild curiosity. Without saying a word, Hire peered around the lab. Copper and brass piping choked the floors. Incomprehensible wires and motherboards lay about randomly, while tools and unidentifiable devices filled every shelf. "I see you're still living up to your reputation," the hyena cop noted. "And what would that be?" Hire looked away as he said, "Lackadaisical and slovenly." Z-Money took offense, standing up and walking toward Hire. "Oh, is that right?" Z-Money pressed a button on his side device, and every monitor in the lab was flooded with images of Hire engaged in sketchy, but not necessarily illegal activity. I see your reputation as confrontational and possibly corrupt is still accurate, the genius retorted. Hire spread his coat open, subtly revealing his service pistol. You have proof to back that up, son? Zimani suddenly slammed his fist on a button panel to his right. The next thing Hire knew, there were 4 steel gray cannons dropping from the ceiling and aiming their barrels squarely at him. Hire stepped back. I don't appreciate being intimidated, Zimani said. They're just tasers, but I mean, there's 4 of them. A female voice pierced through the ensuing silence of the standoff. Well, Officer Zeeby shouted, that escalated quickly. Both Hire and Zimani looked over to see the feisty zebra cop leering at them, with her arms crossed, head tilted unhappily. You 2 testosterone-seething macho men want to give it a rest for a second? I have some questions I need answered. Officer Zeeby strode over to Zimani. Good to see you again. I wish it were under different circumstances. Zimani asked, What circumstances? The zebra handed over her smartphone. On there are the case files we have so far. Of primary interest to you are the closed-circuit camera recordings of 3 different robberies, all of them within the last 72 hours. Zimani continued to listen. Zeeby stared over at Hire as she explained. You'll have to forgive my temporary partner, Officer Hire. There are 3 women who've gone missing, and we need your help. Zimani nodded, then connected Zeeby's smartphone to a micro USB adapter and began downloading the data to his main server. As he proceeded with that task, Officer Zeeby took aside Hire and whispered, What did I walk in on here? Were you trying to bully that young man into helping you? Hire clearly had to struggle to keep his voice a whisper as he growled, 3 women are missing! I'm aware of that fact. The undercover hyena placed both hands on top of his head in frustration and looked away. I'm also aware, Officer Zeeby finished her thought, of the rumors that you have the highest IQ on the police force. Makes you gruff, hard to work with. You think everybody else is stupid. The hyena shook his head. What does that have to do with anything? The zebra pointed across the cluttered lab at the busy. If you listen to the physics professors at the university and their accounts, that may very well be the smartest person on the entire planet. So, trying to bully him? You may be the guy on the police force with the highest IQ, but that's about as intimidating to him as the world's smartest cricket. The guy's young, but he knows how to build an artificial sun. We want to solve this case, solve it fast, and we want to save the hostages? Zeeby glanced over at Zimani. He's our best. Hire relented and placed his hands on his hips. He sighed, long and hard. Zeeby grinned as she watched the undercover hyena walk over to the hard-working. Listen, the gruff hyena muttered. Let's start over. We got 3 potential victims missing, and I'm not used to having a partner, let alone 3. We could really use your help. Zimani said, What can I do? Hire explained. Detective reasoning would state that there is a pattern to the robberies and a pattern to the hostages. Can you create software or some kind of program to recognize these patterns? The genius looked up at the undercover cop, then over to Officer Zeeby. How long do I have? Not long.